Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
I think so often one of the big pushbacks on compensation frameworks and thinking about this deeply is that a lot of people think it's going to limit their flexibility. And it's not that. It's really about like, how do we codify the things that are important to us as a company around how we want to pay? And how do we ensure that the system is kind of built for that and with that in mind?
Managing people shouldn't feel like you're juggling while you're blindfolded. Lattice can help as your all-in-one HR platform that scales with your business and keeps everyone happy. It's the best of both worlds, stellar people programs and a modern HRIS all-in-one. With Lattice, you can really have it all. No trade-offs, no regrets. Multi-state compliance is a nightmare, but 650 makes it easy. Get instant questions to employment law questions, generate a compliant multi-state handbook in minutes, and stay ahead of changing laws with automated updates. Visit SIXFIFTY.com to learn more. That's 650.com. Another week, another episode of Me in Your Ears. What a time to be alive. I'm Hiba, your resident hater and host of what will surely be the best hour of your life. I am aiming very high today. Today's topic is relevant to everyone, not just HR. And I'm sure you're sick of hearing me say this, but in case you're new here, you'll want to know what the fuck is going on. This season was inspired by the sublime hit Girls Just Want to Have Fun, except the Hiba twist on it, employees just want blank. Can you tell I was an RA in college? I have big RA energy, apparently. Today, it's employees just want to be paid right. And joining me to talk about what it actually means, what being paid right actually means, is Matt McFarlane. Matt has a background in people operations and has witnessed firsthand the challenges that come with compensation. Driven by this experience, he has made it his mission to specialize in startup compensation, helping scaling companies develop pay practices that are clear, fair, and competitive. Matt, welcome to the pod.
Hello. So amazing to be here.
Is that an Australian accent I hear? Sorry, I'm kidding.
It certainly is. So what is it? It's my Friday morning, 7 a.m. It's your Thursday evening. We're covering all corners of the globe.
Dang, yeah, we really got it. What's Friday like? Is my Friday going to be good? Can you tell me?
It's looking good. A little cloudy over here, so hopefully we'll spare you that. But no, it's looking good. Just that little bit closer to the weekend. So, it's all good right here.
I'm jealous you're living in my future, but I will be there tomorrow soon enough. Which, for anyone listening to this on a Monday, they're like, "What the hell?
What is happening? What is going on?" Yeah, welcome to end of the week chit chat.
Yeah, sorry. We'll get you. You all will get to Friday. We promise this week. I like to ask an opening question every season, and this season the opening question is, "What's one truth about work you wish more leaders understood?"
Oh. That is a big question.
It's loaded.
One truth about work you wish more leaders understood. Honestly, don't take it so seriously. Like girls just want to have fun. I think everyone just wants to have fun. It's, let's just chill out a bit. Let's just, we're all here to have, a good time and make some money and live a good life. So let's just focus on that over all the other stuff.
I love that because I just had a call with one of the co-founders of Work Week, and we were talking about how do we inject more fun into work? And I was like, wow, we should just be having more fun. I am not curing cancer. A really big thank you to all the people that are doing that. I'm just sending emails some days. So we just have more fun.
Exactly. That's why I'm really big into compensation memes at the moment, because I'm just it's such a boring topic most of the time. I'm we can spice this up. We can have a bit of fun. Let's make fun of ourselves. Let's enjoy the thing we're working on. All that sort of stuff. It should be possible for everything.
Yeah. And we can. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to make compensation fun again. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's always been fun for me. I love talking about compensation. With that, what does being paid right actually mean to you? And how do most companies get it wrong? Or where do they get it wrong?
Yeah. It's right is such a, it's obviously such a subjective thing. There's no right salary. I say that all the time. I say it to people I work with. I think so many, compensation is viewed as this deeply, deeply analytical thing, when actually what you're solving for is deeply emotional. Like you're dealing with
Mm.
people, and for everyone, their kind of interpretation of what right is. I mean, for me, it's, I really just want to know why I'm getting paid what I'm getting paid, and maybe what I should be getting paid, and like understand it, and kind of, there'd be some kind of logic, and it be explainable. That for me is like sufficient to tell me that I know I'm probably being paid right to some kind of concept that the employer has in mind. Like I remember in a very early job, I went and asked for a pay increase, and the response from the CEO, was only a small tech company at the time. The response from the CEO was, "You're just not there yet from a performance perspective." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Like, great feedback moment." No,
Yeah.
that was all he gave me. "You're just not there yet." And I was like, "Okay, well, what can I do to get there to this mythical place?" And he just said, "You're just not there yet. I'll know when you're there, but right now you're just not there yet." And I was like, cool. So I'm sure you can probably imagine how much longer I hung around there, not knowing how long this musical road was going to take
Not
to get to
long.
this location. Yeah. So I think just understanding, like, what is there? What does it mean for people? And I think, that dovetails neatly into the second part of the question, which is just, that's the thing that so many companies get wrong. They just don't do a great job of articulating how they think about pay and why the number that you have is the number.
Yeah. It's really hard because like people have, I think very rarely have like the number, how do I say it? Well, it's the end of the day for me, so I'm clearly losing my mind. But it's like employees have this mythical number in their mind. And a
Yeah.
lot of times it's like actually hard to meet that number. And then you have to explain to them like how you actually get to the number you get to. And that disconnect sometimes is so wide that it's like you're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But like that's your job, is to like help not manage, but like set their expectations.
Yeah.
It's
And
yeah.
yeah. But I feel like everyone has unrealistic expectations when it comes to compensation. Everyone always thinks they should be getting paid more.
But I would argue it's because they don't know what realistic is. Like,
Yeah.
as an individual, how many, what are you using to set your appetite for pay? It's
Mm.
probably what I was paid in my last job, what I'm paid in my current job. It's there's maybe 2 or 3 people in my network I've had a conversation with about it. Maybe I've got a couple of friends I know what they're getting paid, but they're probably not in the same job. You know what else we see? We see the TikToks, the Instas, all this sort of stuff with, the tech bros and the tech girlies who are kind of, doing those day in the life videos where they're like, "I'm on $3 bajillion and I'm working from the pool today." So I don't blame people when they're kind of like, "I want at least $2 bajillion. Like,
Yeah.
why can't I have that?" And so I just, companies just need to be like, "Look, that is a 1% salary. And these are people who are glorifying something that may not even be earning it themselves. But fundamentally, here's how we think about pay. Here's how that translates into a dollar figure. Ta-da. It's that
Yeah.
simple."
We don't do that very often. So, like, this
No.
brings up the bigger point. When someone says, "I don't feel like I'm paid fairly," what do you think they're really trying to say?
Yeah. There's like, they've seen something that tells them that what they're earning is at odds with what they should be earning. So there's kind of 2 dimensions to this from my perspective. One is they've seen something in the external market. So they've seen a day in the life of video, they've seen a job ad with a salary listed, they've seen something out there in the big wide world that tells them that what they're earning for a similar role is not what they could be earning or potentially should be earning. The second is someone doing a similar job to them. So they've spoken and they've found out that there's a peer who in their mind or in reality is doing a similar job and they're getting paid less. And so those 2 things are 99% of the time why somebody feels they're not being paid fairly. But again, the great thing is that just being clear about what you pay and how you aspire to pay is a fantastic solve for that. If you're not paying 99th percentile salaries, which newsflash, 99% of companies aren't.
I was like, who is?
Yeah.
In this
Like,
economy?
in this, I know, right? It's like you get snacks. That's what you get. But it's, explain that. What's the rationale? Why do we pay what we pay? And then that's really the solve. Again, I think this is gonna be the theme of this show, is like, just talk about why you pay and what you pay. Because it just helps unpick a lot of this, like, I don't feel paid fairly. There's a gap, right? Like, there's a gap between what I'm paid and what I see other people paid, and my understanding of those 2 things is the gap that does not exist that needs to be filled. And the company's got to do that.
Yeah. Why do you think it's such a taboo topic in the workplace, though? Like, who actually benefits from all of us not talking about pay?
It's like, look, it's funny because it's like I talk about pay transparency all the time. I still feel deeply uncomfortable in some respects talking about pay.
Really?
I posted something at the start of this year where I talked about my my revenue for my first year of business. Like ordinarily, I'm like, yeah, everyone should talk about money and salaries and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, I feel really just like, as I was typing, I was like, I feel uncomfortable writing this. And I think it's just because like it's been beaten into us for years, like throughout, like certainly my whole upbringing, it was always this like hushed topic. You shouldn't ask someone what they earn. You certainly shouldn't discuss it. I mean, you know, I'm here in Australia. We only just banned pay secrecy recently. So yeah, you know, we've only just removed the sort of prohibition on people discussing pay, you know, if you've got that in their contract. So it's just been such a deeply ingrained part of everyone's life, I think, so much so. But the problem is that it just creates this power imbalance where it serves only the employer, right? Like, again, if you've only got 2, 3, 4 data points and it's your kind of immediate network and maybe these sort of adjacent roles that you're seeing, like you compare that to a company who's shelling out tens of thousands of dollars for hundreds or thousands of data points. They know what the market pays. You don't know what the market pays. You've got a very small sort of perspective on that. And so it's kind of perpetuated this issue of people not really understanding what their value is. But the awesome thing is, and the thing I'm loving about like Gen Z, there's a lot, they're getting, every generation, you know, is kind of rides the news wave for at least a decade or something. And right now they're being criticized for a lot of things. But I love the fact that it's just not a taboo thing for them. Like they are default transparent when it comes to salary, more than happy to chat about it. And so I'm really like excited about that change that's coming in. But now it's just like companies need to react and respond, right?
Yeah, I love, I used to ask my friends, like, how much money do you make? And all of them were like, that's so uncomfortable. Why are you asking this? And I was like, I'm building a data set, okay? It's the data set of my brain. Yeah.
It's a professional question.
Yeah. So serious question, how much are all of us getting paid? Just tell me.
But like what, like I don't know I can't tell you what it is, right? Like I can't tell you why it's uncomfortable. It just is. It's just a weird feeling in my stomach where I'm like, oh, I just shouldn't talk about it. And it's like there's no reason. I can't tell you why. It just is it's a thing.
I don't know how we end up. That's like an episode for another day. But it's interesting because it's been illegal in America for, I can't remember the year that they enacted the legislation to tell, a long time. And it's funny though, because on TikTok, people will still be like, oh, my employer told me I'm not allowed to do that. And I'm like, that's not true.
Yeah, they can't
tell each other how much you're making. Like, do you think employees should know what their coworkers make?
Yeah, this is the tricky one, hey, because I do still think it's a really personal thing, right? Like it's personal information at the end of the day. Like it's to do with you and things like that. I think it's also like, you know, in many companies that have a performance element to their pay, like I could see why someone would be uncomfortable sharing that. And so I think for me personally, I would default to like, if you feel comfortable sharing it, great, but I don't think it should just be default sort of everywhere. What I think should be default transparent is companies, you know, making it clear at the very least internally what the roles within their business are worth and how they're valued. Because I think there's so much to be gained by, you know, an individual just knowing, hey, I'm paid right compared to what the company thinks my role is worth. But also like, where do I want to go in this place? Like, you know, loyalty is at an all-time low. People are trading jobs like, you know, trading cards. It's you need every like competitive edge you can in terms of helping people stay in a company and like plot a course from a career perspective. Are they going to, you know, get more senior and climb that corporate ladder? Are they going to move between roles internally? Like it just takes away that little bit of friction and just gives people one less decision or one less question to ask, is if they can just know what the salary is going to be, either if they perform really well and they get that progression increase, or if they want to go to a different role internally, what's that going to, you know, result in from a salary perspective? So that's more the default that I would say companies and people should have. But yeah, I think like personal pay is still, it's a personal pay thing.
That's my data. My friend Sarah likes to say that's like my privacy data. You can't, you shouldn't be telling people how much money I'm earning. I think it's interesting because there are some companies in the United States, like I think there's Buffer is one of them. There's another
Mm,
company I talked to someone where they just all their pay for every single person is in a spreadsheet. Everyone sees it. And then
yeah.
for what they've done that's really interesting is they've also really clearly defined their leveling structure and what
Mm,
it takes to like be at that level to achieve that pay. So
yeah.
like that's an interesting approach to me because they're doing all the work to make everything transparent and determining their pay. But
Yeah.
I think I also fall on the page of like, I want the choice to tell people how much money I
Yeah.
make.
Yeah. You want to opt in, right?
I want to opt in. So like I guess like if people are applying there, they're opting in knowing that like everyone's salary is transparent. That's their choice. So I think it's interesting and I'll be intrigued to see if more companies go that route in the future.
Yeah.
Um there's this idea of like pay gaps and I've been thinking about this a lot. So this is like maybe a philosophical question, I don't know.
Hmm.
Do you think pay gaps are intentional or just a result of like a broken system?
Yeah. I take a really like glass half full, you know, choose to believe there's sort of positive intent behind a lot of the reasons why pay gaps exist. And it's because I've been there, right, front and center. I've seen how it's perpetuated and the kind of logic that goes into it. But I really do think it's just broken systems. Like it's, they come about from, a manager deeply wanting to retain somebody who's gone and gotten another job, or how felt they've had to go get another job and they've had to counter offer. And like, look, rightly or wrongly, whether their pay should have kept pace with the market, all that sort of stuff. Like, obviously, the manager wants to keep them. That, in my mind, is an admirable thing, even if they should have done it ages ago. But the problem, I guess, that happens here is that they're trying to solve for the individual scenario, and they don't take into account that like broader impact when it comes to pay equity. And so when you keep solving for all of these like discrete, isolated issues, you don't solve for the big kind of systemic issue. And, if you just look at all of the kinds of people that are going to negotiate or are going to ask for pay increases or are going to come and ask, for counter offer, we all know who fits in that cohort. And that's where we start to see these problems perpetuated. So it is definitely a broken system thing. It's the fact that we allow that to happen. It's the fact that we aren't taking a workforce or a system wide look at what's going on and trying to counter that. But I do think it comes from a good place in the sense that they're trying to just give people what they want. But it's again, that's what they want is hilarious because, like, again, there's no right salary, and what people really want is to be paid fairly. Like, I think there's research out there that says or suggests at the very least that people would rather be paid fairly than paid more money if it were less than their colleague. So if two people were paid $100,000, they'd be more happy with that versus getting paid $110,000, but their colleague gets 120, which is crazy, right? Like, you're getting $10,000 more, but your emotional circumstance is that you're actually worse off because somebody who's doing the same job as you is getting paid more than you. So that's the problem you're trying to solve for, is that system problem.
Yeah. It's just like it's so interesting, like thinking about how often like we also as HR just inherit systems. Like I'm never employee one unless I start my own
Yeah.
company. Like I'll never be employee one, right? So any environment I'm walking into, I'm inheriting whatever the person before me thought was like right. And I think pay is one of those things that like it's nuanced. You have to
Mhm.
understand it. You have to know how to level people. You have to understand what the market is, what percent you're at, how you compete against people, like what kind of talent you're trying to get. And so I just think like for a lot of HR people, we walk into like systems and pay decisions that we didn't even make. I'm like,
Oh
I didn't
yeah.
even make this. And also like I might not even have the power to fix this.
Yeah.
So like dealing with that in itself, I think is like so hard when employees come to me and they're like, I want to be paid more. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I want you to be paid more too, but
Yeah.
I can't really fix this situation. Not to mention, like, you and I have done a lot of startups, so like, the cash
Mhm.
is not endless at a startup.
No, it is not.
So, like, you have to sometimes make a hard decision that, like, how are you gonna make it when, like, there's no cash for you to give someone?
But yeah, look, can I just say as well, though, like, even companies with all the cash, I caught up with a guy from Meta the other day from their rewards team. Like, it's not all sunshines and rainbows over there either. Like, they've got
No.
just as many problems from a rewards perspective, and they have just as many challenges. It's just on a very different scale. Like, I think it's so often easy to get caught up with the brand or the outside perception of companies and where we think they probably are from a compensation perspective or whatever. And the reality is often very different. But, whether you inherited it or you've been there, you've been employee 1 or 2 or whatever, I think every company has these challenges, and there's like, it's rife with compromise. Like, you're trying to just solve for the best decision for the individual and for the company and all of these other interests. And there's no right answer. You're just trying to make the most educated, logical decision you can. And again, I think it's just that decision isn't often communicated very well or clearly. And so people don't understand the why behind it, which leads them to go, I don't think I'm paid fairly, when actually there might be.
It's so funny. One time I did explain the why, and the employee's feedback was that I was condescending. So that was really fun for me.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
I mean, I
You
get it.
can't win
I'm
them
like,
all.
I'm just like, whatever, that's fine. Like, you don't have to agree with me,
Yeah.
but like, I'm just trying to explain it to you so you understand like the level of care and thought
Yeah.
I gave to this. Like, I
Yeah.
want you to know. And I want like more HR people to do that too. But I once worked with a founder who was like hesitant to define the compensation philosophy. And I was like, why would you be hesitant to define this? This is what you actually
Yeah.
can point to. And when someone asks you questions, you just say, here you go. Here
Yeah.
you go. We did it. So I mean, I think compensation is just like really interesting. When you think about like systems and processes, if you could change one thing about compensation and how it's handled in most organizations, what would it be?
I think it's just that clarity piece, right? Like, I talk to people about this a lot. Like, I think too often we overcomplicate what pay is in a company. And like, we don't just think like, sure, there is, don't get me wrong, there's a deeply strategic, analytical element to, to pay in some respects. And that's the part that I love to play in, but there's the sort of human need aspect of it it can be satisfied in such a basic way. Like, all of the questions you just said, like, how do we think about pay? What are some kind of underlying principles we have about pay and how we think about it as a company? How do we translate that to where we sit in the market? What is the market? So do we use benchmark data? Where does that come from? Who does it report on? What kind of companies? How often do we refresh it? When can I get a pay increase? These are really fundamental questions that a company can probably sit down and jot down in an afternoon, and they have more clarity and transparency in their pay processes than 99% of companies that are out there. And I just think it's such a low barrier to entry. Just jot it down, show it to your executive team and say, did I get anything wrong with this? Or is this kind of how we do things now, today? Like, it may not be how we do things tomorrow, but is it how we do things now? And can I put that out to people and say, hey, we realize we haven't been very clear about how we think about pay. Here you go. Here's the highlights. Let us know if you've got any questions. And then the other aspect to it as well is that, and I think some startups are pretty good at this, is like, we're young and we're trying to build things, but they're going to change, and like, we're not going to get everything right, and like, just give us feedback and we will. And I think so often the default attitude around comp is we have to be 100% right. If we get it wrong, I'm liable for back pays, and I'm liable for all of these like sort of issues that people will bring to us. And it's like, no, it's like, it's an evolving thing. You may not be getting it right now. You probably won't get it right in the future, but it's just about having the intention to, and being prepared to, be vulnerable in terms of sharing how things work now, get that feedback and iterate with it along the way. And your people will be so much more the better for it. They'll trust you more because you've invited them in under the hood of something that is, usually really, really taboo and not discussed very well. I just think it solves so many problems.
Yeah. I just like, how do you then deal with, I have encountered founders who are like, absolutely not. I don't want to define anything compensation related. I want to be able to decide everything.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
I mean, you really you kind of have to present the issues that perpetuates. So, I spoke to someone the other day who said, without a word of a lie, 50% of their week is currently taken up by pay-related issues, and they're in a relatively small team. 50% of their week. So, I know what, if you know what your salary is, that there's a dollar figure there of saying, here's how much it costs this business to solve these questions that could probably be solved with a half an hour of writing a document that answers them and publishes them, and get like, that's the kind of stuff that you can go back to them with. And if they still want that, I mean, what are the other issues it's creating? I mean, if you've got a gender pay gap, if people are concerned with that, if you're seeing that it's a challenge when it comes to hiring, how are your offers being rejected based on pay?
Yeah.
Are you losing people based on pay? Like these are the sorts of things where if it is creating a true issue,
Yeah.
it's just raising all of these things and just being upfront with them and saying, hey, like it's cool if you want this. It's your choice, it's your company. But this is the problem it presents. Like I'm backfilling all these roles. I'm rehiring the same people that we're losing because they're disappointed with pay and we don't feel like we're paying fairly. Is that what you want my role to be, or do you want me to be a strategic, talent enabler and so on from there? So I think just presenting these things, not in a like, in a sort of gnarly way, but just being like, I'm going to present the issues and here's a recommendation around how I think we can solve it. And it's, it's also putting in front of them some of the ways in which they can keep some of that flexibility without, but also being able to answer some of the questions that your people have. I think so often one of the big pushbacks on compensation frameworks and thinking about this deeply is that a lot of people think is going to limit their flexibility. And it's not that. It's really about like, how do we codify the things that are important to us as a company around how we want to pay? And how do we ensure that the system is kind of built for that and with that in mind? So if ultimately, if salaries are, if your flexibility is hindering your ability to hire and retain people, then the salaries are wrong. The system is wrong. It shouldn't be saying no all the time. It should be saying no where pay inequities and things like that come to play, but it really should be seamlessly facilitating what you need from a business perspective. So again, like I've posted about this before, but I used to butt heads with the talent acquisition team because they always wanted to raise the top end of the salary bands. And I'm like, no, they're the bands. These are, they are the way they are. And I think, yeah, they're the bands. Those little policy police. And it's, I didn't appreciate the fact that these people are speaking, TA are speaking to the market all the time. They know what the market is offering. And I mean, sure, yes, there is a sprinkle of, I would like to raise the band because it's going to make it easier to place this person. But also if the market's moved and our salaries haven't catered for that, then the salaries are wrong. So it's about creating a system that gives us, clarity and consistency. It's not to be preventative. So I think asking some more like exploratory questions of that founder and just understanding what they mean when they say, I want to be able to make decisions. Like, what are the things you think you're going to lose by us introducing this pay system, and just trying to find a way to build to that.
I always say when we start recruiting for a role, like we do band dollar roles, and I know what percent of the market we pay at, and I'm like usually pretty confident the salary's on, but I always say like, this is what I've budgeted. If we hear from like multiple candidates, like if we go after this profile and we hear from multiple candidates that like the pay band is not matching it, then we have a real problem. We haven't actually encountered it yet, so I like to think like we are doing a good job, but I always keep that in mind, because if somebody is telling us, especially if you're trying to, I think the other hard part for a lot of startups is sometimes we try to go recruit from bigger companies, and we cannot compete with the Facebook, Google salary, Amazon salary. Like we cannot. And so I think that's the other nuance too that people need to realize, like where you get your talent from too does matter. So I think like this is I feel like I could spend all day, like not 50% of my week working on compensation, because that would send me over the edge. But I could probably spend a lot of my week just thinking about these things because it's so fascinating to me. And I've been somebody who had a counterpart who made more than me. Actually, they left. They made the same amount as me. They left. They came back, made more than me when they came back. And I was told, like, we will get you to where they are in 6 months or less. And I remember being like, why do I have to wait 6 months? Like they just left and came back in 3 months. Like, how is this real? So I'm very deeply passionate about this, which brings me to like another point that I care very deeply about. One of my biggest pet peeves is when managers say, oh, I don't know why I have to do this, but HR told me I had to, which I'm like, excuse me? What role do you think managers should play in pay equity, even if they can't control the compensation structure, with which most managers can't? What role should they be actually playing?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think their role when it comes to the pay of their direct reports. So I think they really should be that like helping hand, that kind of coach, that mentor, that like, how can I help you solve the problem that you're facing right now? I think so often, a lot of the questions I get, like so often the companies are sort of like, what do we do when someone comes to the manager and says, I want a pay increase? And I think too often everyone thinks we have to be able to solve that issue right then and there, when we can often just talk about, or at the very least, understand what's going on in their mind. Like, okay, sure, tell me a bit more about why you think that's the case. Like, have you seen something in the market that's given you the impression we're off? Or do you feel like your performance has been great? Do you feel like you're actually operating at a high level role? Should you be promoted? Like, let's unpack that first and just understand what you mean by I should get a pay increase. And then the manager's job is to help explore, like, okay, is this a valid case? Like, let's go work out together what, whether you're actually due a pay increase and we need to make that change, or if actually we need to talk about what that journey to a pay increase is. So how to get that promotion, how to get that progression pay increase. But again, we talked about this before, is that I think you can't just be solving for the isolated individual. You really have to have that lens of what impact is this going to have across the team. Is this going to create an issue where suddenly I'm paying the person, the squeaky wheel, I'm paying them more because they've come to me and been prepared to ask for more increase. You probably have a HR team or a person, like, use them. And that's what we're there for. That's what we love being asked to help with, is what problems is this going to create? And how do we solve for that? Because I can, like, anytime anyone, and there's probably not, I'd be curious to know how many of your listeners would have had this experience, but anytime anyone's ever come to you, your employers come to you and said, hey, we're going to give you a pay increase, and it's totally unprompted. Oh my God, that's like professional nirvana. Like, nobody, when does that ever happen, right? So if you've got, Jim, I'm going to say Jimbo because that's like classic cousin name, comes and says, I want to get a pay increase. And actually Jim is due a pay increase. We go, okay, we realize that we're off on the market. We need to remedy this. Otherwise Jim's going to go get another job. But, Marie is in the same job. If you were to go to Marie and say, hey, we've looked at the salaries for these roles and we realize we're off a bit. We're going to give you a pay increase. Like, I cannot tell you the things that does for their engagement, for their faith, their trust in the business, that they've got a system and the system works. And I don't have to be constantly looking out for myself on pay, because everyone thinks they have to be, rightly so. It kind of just helps solve for that issue. But yeah, I think it's a long-winded way of answering. Like, I think they just have to have that, like, broader outlook, like, at the very least, what impact is it going to have on my team, but also, work with the HR team to see if it's going to have a broader impact on the business. Are there other roles that also need to be lifted, and look at it from that sort of systems lens rather than the individual?
We've all had those head scratcher moments, like, why did our star player just bail? Or who messed up payroll again? Yeah, those could have been dodged with a little help from Lattice. It's the all-in-one HR platform designed to power performance and stop HR regrets in their tracks. No need to sacrifice a solid tech stack for top-notch people programs. With Lattice, you get both. Ready to leave those regrets in the dust? Check out Lattice at lattice.com/no-regrets. Swing by lattice.com/no-regrets. Is it just me, or does multi-state HR compliance feel impossible to keep up with? 650 is here to help. With 650, you can generate handbooks, hiring paperwork, separation agreements, and more that's compliant in all 50 states. As laws change, your documents update automatically. Consider it your secret weapon for staying compliant without losing your mind. And with 650 AI, you can ask employment law questions in your own words and get quick, reliable answers without all the legalese. No more hunting down state law information, no more outdated policies, just peace of mind. Visit 650, SIXFIFTY.com to see why HR teams love 650. That's 650.com. Yeah, I sometimes when I make guides for managers, like especially around performance reviews too, I like to do like a Q&A at the very bottom of the guide around like common asked questions and like how to reply to them, just to like pre-help them, because I just think like a lot of managers are, for all the things we get mad about for managers, which I get mad at quite a bit, like they're dealing with so much. Also, them having to explain compensation structures that they didn't build or they're unfamiliar with, and like they might even have their own questions about comp, I think is like a little bit unrealistic, like that they'll just out of the gate know. So I also think like making sure you have resources for them that's like, here's how we talk about compensation.
Oh, for sure.
Here's what
Yeah.
to say when someone says, "Can I get a raise?" Like,
Yeah.
here's what happens. But I mean, you brought this up earlier when someone comes to you with like a competing offer. I have like the hot take of don't match the competing offer unless that person like leaving your business is like truly gonna cripple your business entirely. I always feel like matching a competing offer puts you in like such a bad spot.
It does. And I mean, everything to do with pay is an incentive, right? So what are you incentivizing by giving them that pay increase?
Them to
You're
stay a
telling
little longer.
everybody because they're going to go and talk about it, and it's
Oh,
their
for
right to.
sure.
And so what does suddenly everyone else is like, well, I'm going to go apply for that role and I'm going to go get that pay increase and I'm going to get the contract and put it in front of you and get the pay increase. I mean, if that's the kind of culture you want to perpetuate, fine. But I mean, I think we all know, everyone listening knows that, the longevity of that employee, if they had a genuine reason to be going and looking is
They'll leave.
very limited. They're off, like they're gone in 6 months. And I mean, again, I'm sure everyone here has had a pay increase where, it's exciting for the first 5 minutes that you've got that letter. But after that, it's kind of just like, yeah, cool. It just goes into my, monthly salary or whatever it is. So it is a really, it's not a great thing to perpetuate, I would say, in companies. I think if you can just get paid right from the start and you pay right, and if that person comes to you and says, hey, I did get that offer from Facebook or Google, it's like, that's so good. Like, I'm so happy for you. We can't match Facebook and Google. Like, wishing you every success. Thank you for everything you've done. We hope you'll come back. We hope that you'll talk, good things about us in the market to other candidates, whatever it might be. Let them go. Like, it's, and if you could, if it is that person that you go, actually, we do genuinely need, then you probably should have been paying them more.
Yeah. That's a good point. You should have been paying them more. Don't be held hostage. I always joke when employees throw competing offers at me, it feels like I'm in a hostage situation. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be
No.
held hostage by you. Like, this is not fun for me.
Yeah.
You touched on this lately, but what does a truly fair, inclusive, and modern compensation philosophy look like to you?
Yeah.
Loaded.
This is another
That's
big
loaded.
one. I know. Can we do a whole nother hour podcast? It's look, it's not the same for every company, I would say. I don't think there's like, I have often, I have, comp nerd fantasies, and I often think about like, is there truly a one size fits all model? I've even thought about trying to create something like this, but I just don't think it exists. I think there's traits, there's elements of like what to look for. But I mean, like a really obvious one for me is like, would two people doing the same job ever be paid differently, and like under what circumstances? Because you can answer that two different ways, right? So you can answer it and say, if you're doing the same job, no, like you'd be earning exactly the same money. And even if, one's been here longer or one's performing more, or, whatever, better or whatever it is, you're paid the same. And that's fine. That would be fair to some people. But then on the opposite end of the spectrum, two people doing the same job, one's been here for longer. And I mean, 10 years isn't always a great thing to factor in when it comes to pay. But sometimes it's necessary. But performance as well, like there's a lot of people who would look at that and go, well, hang on, if I'm doing the same job as, Joe Bloggs over there, why am I getting paid the same when I'm crushing it and they are not? And I want to be paid differently. So I think it looks different to each individual. And again, this is why comp is such a fun space, because doing the same thing in every company doesn't work. And you really have to create you have to apply your DNA to it. You have to really surface all the things that are valuable to you as a company. And you just have to be clear. You have to define what those things are. And then you just have to be consistent, because that's the other thing that really crushes fair pay practices, is when the company's gone to all of this effort to say, here's how we pay as a company. And then that counteroffer or whatever it is happens, and you catch wind of it and you're like, but your thing says this. It says we pay that way. Like, why are you doing that over there? And it just completely undermines the entire point of having a good pay system. So it doesn't mean the system can't change, but when it does, and when you do make, changes for the individual, think about what it means for the system. Where did the system fail, and how can we then be transparent about that? How can we make sure that we're consistent about it in application, all that sort of stuff? Because the last thing you want is for people, especially if you're putting the effort to build a comp philosophy or a job structure or whatever it is, the last thing you want is for people to look at it and go, well, this is total, nonsense. It doesn't mean anything. So, yeah.
Yeah. So much of that. I think like every time, I think exceptions I've gotten the feedback recently. I feel like I've shared this a lot, so I'll just share it again on this podcast. But I've gotten the feedback recently that I say no a lot. Like my first reaction to things is to say no, which I took that feedback very graciously because I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah, maybe I just say no. The one thing that though that like really irks me about compensation stuff though is like when everyone wants to make an exception. And if like every day you're making an exception to the rule, it's like we're not that's not how this works. And so I love that you talk about like it should be an iterative process. Like there's flexibility in compensation, modern compensation philosophies, but that flexibility shouldn't be every time there's an offer, there's an exception.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot because I'm like, I say no a lot. And I'm like, well, should I say no? Honestly, like there are times where I'm like, I should say no about these things. And then
Yeah.
it's a really funny time for me because I'm like, I'll think about it. And then I come back and I'm like, it's a no for me.
You like what's
I'm
that game
drinking
show where
my
they press the button and the big red X comes up?
yeah.
It's just like, "Bah."
I'm drinking them. It was fun feedback to get, but I think sometimes like as HR and like as comp people, like you want to protect the system so deeply that you build because like you
Yeah.
care about that fairness, you care about the equity. Like I think a lot of people who do this work probably have experienced being treated unfairly. And so when it comes to having the power to design this like beautiful system that ensures fairness for everyone, I feel like a lot of us then become protective. But I don't want that protection to like stop us from realizing that like philosophy should be iterative in order for it to be modern and has to be able to like move and change with your organization too.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely cannot be this sacred thing. And it's, the really great HR people and people recognize that it's fundamentally there to help us as a business be successful and make money and all that sort of stuff, right? And if it's hindering that, as beautifully designed and developed and whatever as it is, it's got to change and it's got to evolve. And you've got to help it continue to achieve that goal that it has for the company. It's like, so, I mean, I've made a million exceptions in my career when it comes to pay, which is how I've let all of these terrible practices. And I think so often at the time, because everyone's time poor, right? In the moment, you kind of like, this will just be a one-off thing and it's never going to repeat itself. And you think, and then suddenly, and I think we all know the answer to that and what actually happens in practice. But I think just giving that little bit of thought and having that conversation with the manager to understand why this exception exists and how we can cater to others who may have exceptional circumstances or whatever as well is really important, because again, you want to make sure that the system is fair and consistent across the board. You don't just want this one individual with their exceptional whatever it is to kind of be given special treatment, and then again it starts to undermine what you've got in place.
Totally. Okay, you said one thing previously before I started on this rant that you are like a big comp nerd. What's like one thing you genuinely nerd out about when it comes to comp?
I'm kind of on this thing at the moment where I'm like, I still learn so much about like Excel and like data and things like that all the time. And like, shout out to YouTube, the best tutor I've ever had. Like I've literally everything. I don't think I've ever done an Excel course or a analysis course. Everything I've learned has been through trial and error and YouTube. But I'm on this thing about like cool graphs. I don't know why. I've just been on this thing lately where I'm like, I kind of have this idea in my mind and I know what I'm trying to present. Like the other day I did one, I'd never even heard of it before, but again, I knew what I had in mind, in my mind's eye of what I was trying to create, but it's called a dumbbell graph. And it's just like really simple. It was like, how do I show the movement in comp ratio from before a merit cycle to after a merit cycle, and do it, for the whole company or for the department. And anyway, it's now I feel like I'm going to have to post about this because it was like a little fun moment where I was like, oh, this is a fun little graph and how to work out how to make it and stuff. So yeah, that's definitely on the nerdy side of things that still, light my fire.
I love that. I'm also a data nerd, so welcome. I'm always like, I need this graph and I need it to look like this. And I'm like trying to like draw it with my hands. And I'm like, I guess I got to go figure out how to do this in Excel. So
yeah,
I feel that. If you could rewrite, I love this question. If you could rewrite the unwritten rules about money at work, what would you say instead? I know.
I'm like, what are the unwritten rules? I mean, the unwritten rule is like, I think now it's unwritten is, especially in Australia, because we only just banned it, is don't talk about your pay. If I could rewrite it, I would say like, talk about it all the time. Like if I reflect on my career arc, there's several kind of traits and truths and things that I sort of carried with me for most of my career that I think have been the reason for what I would say has been a very like not sort of ringing my bell, but like a pretty successful career. I feel like I did a lot in the period of time that I was working internally, but I also feel like I saw incredible salary growth because of some of these things. And I think like it could be as simple as, again, being totally brazen and comfortable having conversations about pay. I mean, ask people if they don't want to share it, that's fine. But fundamentally know your worth, like know where you are in the market. And even when I had teams, I would say like, I had this little mantra where I'm like, always be looking. Like you never know what's going to go on. Like I've been in so many conversations where I've had to lay people off. Like as much as I would like to say that we're all going to be here forever and we're all going to be happy, kumbaya, best workplace ever. Like the reality is not that anymore.
Definitely not.
And so you need to always be looking out for number one and knowing what your place is in the market, knowing how you can grow that. What are the things that I can do or the skills that I can get, or, what are other jobs offering? How do I get those if I want, if growing salary and career opportunities are important to me?
Yeah.
Just always be looking is what I would say is like the mantra that everyone should carry with them. Just always be constantly aware of what is going on for you and how you can capitalize on that. And I know like I work with a lot of employers, as you can imagine. And so they, it may seem at first that that's really, it's perpetuating something that is not very helpful for companies. I think there are a lot of companies talk about how loyalty is at an all-time low and things like that. And it's like, yeah, you kind of know why. Like I understand. Like we had COVID and let's like see how transactional everyone's roles looked during that moment, from boom to bust to boom again. And then now we're in bust again. But, now we've got AI and it's like, oh, AI is going to take your jobs. And it's literally like there are jobs going. Like I saw, a company just, I think yesterday, who's letting people go because of AI efficiencies. Like no roles are sacred anymore. And so I think you just have to be constantly aware of what the market looks like. Like employment for life and job security, like one company forever is no longer a thing. Like that is a rarity. And I think you just have to be aware of what the market is showing or saying about your skills so that you can constantly be kind of capitalizing on that.
Yeah. I wish also like everyone in HR is listening to this. Like there are parts of our jobs, sure, that AI will take over. And so it's like, it's a good and bad thing. I think I'm like really struggling with it because I'm like, could AI ever really fully do my job? And I'm like, probably not. But I wouldn't be surprised if they figured out how to do it right. But I think
how
like
about AI? We're building an agent right now to.
It's me. She makes snarky comments on every single request you ask her. That would actually be really fun. But no, like I'm thinking about them. Like it is a really interesting time. Like I think that joke that's like if you died tomorrow, like your company would post your JD like while everyone was at your funeral. I think that's like a joke that's rooted in a very real space. Like knowing your worth, I think, is one of the biggest lessons I also learned in my career, where I was like, should I stay? Should I leave? Am I being paid enough? And part of it is rooted in pay. I think you're always trying to assess your worth in terms of how much is my skill being paid for. And then the other part of it is just like, am I getting what I want out of this? And I think it's just a great time
question
to learn new skills.
That is, I think like that is such an important question as well so it's always be looking, but always be looking for the things that are important to you. Like have your list of non-negotiables, have your list of things that are nice to haves. And if your company is not satisfying those needs anymore, or if there's another company that can better satisfy them, then consider what needs to happen to be able to get that. Because exactly like you said, and it sounds really coarse. Like your role, not to diminish people, but like we're on a balance sheet, we're resources to companies.
We are. Yes.
And I think that's okay. We just need to accept that that's a lot of the way in which this works now. But this is why I think, companies helping themselves be really great at not just comp, but all the things when it comes to the employee experience, helping them be clear and be consistent and be really optimized towards that is how you prevent people when they do know their worth from actually pursuing it elsewhere. Like that's the thing, right? Is that you're in an environment where increasingly, I think Gen Z is like going to be 25% of the workforce soon. they're always looking. Like, don't get me wrong, but
They know what's
it's
up.
yeah. So like that, it's just a reality that that is going to become more and more present. And I think the most you can do is go, well, let's just be really like clear about how we think about pay and make people not feel like they have to be constantly looking all the time because their needs are being met. And I think that's the advice is just, you just have to level up your game a little bit as a company to prevent the reality of what's coming anyway from kind of impacting.
Yeah. We're here. We're sent from the future, Matt and I, to help you understand what you
Literally.
need to do.
Over here in the
Is that
future,
right?
we've solved all of the problems. So I'm just, yeah.
One can wish. I mean, I like to end every episode with like a little bit of advice, a little bit of future, because the future is bright. I hope if we still have a world in a few years. I'm just about to go there right now. For the advice section, if you could go back in time, what's
Mm.
one conversation about money that you wish you had earlier in your career?
One conversation about money. I mean, I feel like I was always pretty good at just like, as deeply uncomfortable as it was, I was always pretty good at raising, like when I think I should have had a pay increase. Actually, I don't know if it's a conversation so much. I guess it should be a conversation actually, is like,
Yeah.
and then you touched on it a little bit, is like knowing what you want. But like personal finance for me is something that it's like, it's given me so much. Like, I'll give you some examples. So I think I've left 3 roles in my career without having another one to go to because I was ready. I was done. I think in a couple of them, I just felt like the environment was preventing me from physically presenting well to other companies, things like that, just toxic workplace. But, you know, had I not had a really good grasp of personal finance and how to budget, how to save, sounds boring, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's given me that ability, that freedom, that independence to just go, you know what, this job isn't right for me at the moment and I'm going to leave it. And thanks for the mems, but I'm going to go explore some other opportunities. And, you know, it's enabled me to start my own business. Had I not been able to go, okay, if I don't make $1 in 6 months, will I be okay? You know, I would never have been able to do this. And so I think that's a conversation that I wish more companies were having, is like, especially in times where everyone is particularly like cash constrained at the moment, like helping the money that you are paying an employee to go further is hugely impactful. And I just think it's like, you know, I didn't get taught this in school. I don't think you probably got taught it in school. Like
Definitely not.
you have to go and learn this stuff for yourself or get taught it by your parents or something like that. But it's just, yeah, it's not something that's like readily understood about how powerful it can be. So for me, that's a conversation in addition to just pay being less taboo that I wish would happen more.
Yeah. I think I love financial benefits that companies give. Like in the States, you can like get a provider to help like get your employees a financial coach, somebody who can help them understand how to save money, someone who can help them understand how to pay their bills. Like we're not taught that. And I think like by design, we are not taught how to properly save our money and make it go further. And I think like companies that choose to offer financial benefit it sees so much impact because financial stress is like the number one stress people have. It's like the number one leading cause of divorce. Like if
It's a
you
huge
could give
impact.
that benefit, if you could give that benefit to your employees, that's great. I will say at this current market, I would not tell somebody to quit their job without anything lined up just because this current market it's a
Oh,
little
for sure.
weird. I would,
Yeah.
that I have never, and candidly, I have never left a job without having another one lined up, mostly because my
It's the
parents were
scariest thing.
immigrants and I could not. And I also
Yeah.
like wasn't good at saving. It's like I
Yeah.
didn't have runway to like live 6 months without $1. And now I think I'm like much better and smarter about my money. But man, in those early 20s, I was like, I need another job stat.
Yeah.
Gotta pay my rent.
And that's the reality for so many people, right? And it shackles them to, you know, employers I don't think they trade on it maliciously, but it's like, it just helps them keep someone who's unhappy
But it
because
makes me, it makes me so sad. I want
I
people to all be
know.
like, I know it's like really unrealistic, but like I want everyone to be happy at work. And it just feels like so many people are stuck in a bad spot because of what the current economy is, or like can't get another job. And I have like so much empathy for anyone navigating this job market. Like so many of my friends are. I think I've said it on like 18 million episodes in the last 2 years, but it's a really hard market. And I think it's just like really starting to beat people down. And it's so sad.
It is. Yeah. Well, hopefully this episode injects a little bit of fun.
Inspiring.
We all just want to have fun.
We all just want to have fun, but also, let's be real, this world is sad. Okay, yeah. Let's think about a happy thing for right now.
Let's close it out on a happy thing.
High note. Imagine a workplace 10 years from now where everyone feels like they're paid right. What kind of changes would we have to make that a reality?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit before about like comp nerd fantasies. So I have often thought about what it would be like to have a single like global sort of benchmark of everyone's salaries and roles and things like that, and what it would create from a like, I don't know, societal, impact.
Cool.
So I don't know that answers the question, but it's something that I think about because I know, we've got like so many, like anytime I go and look for a vendor, it's like there's so many. Really? And if there was just one, it'd be like, that'd be awesome. That'd be great. It'd also solve a lot of the problems with like, what do we pay in, this random country? I don't know that it would like solve the problem, but I think it would be really interesting in like some of the challenges it would create, but also some of the opportunities. Like I think a lot of people would probably just immediately assume, oh, well, then everyone would just go and apply to, the companies that are paying the highest. Yeah. And also in this fantasy, everyone's got access, right? Companies, employees, everybody. Is what I mean by fantasy.
I like this fantasy. I'm like,
it's totally free. Like, it's just like a public service. Maybe the UN will do it. I don't know. And so, I think I think one of the questions people would no doubt be like asking is, would people not just go and apply to the highest paid jobs? And it's like that kind of happens already anyway, right? Like we already know who the big payers are because they're not quiet about it. And when a little bit of pay transparency is sprinkled in, we know in some of the states that have that law, we know who the big payers are. And so, but I don't think it's going to perpetuate that. I think it does create this question of like, who should be in the bottom percentile? That's like an interesting one. Why are they there? Because like obviously, a percentile it's a statistical representation of the population. So someone has to be in the bottom. But yeah, that's something that I think about. I don't know that it's a solve. It's just I just wanted to share that little comp nerd fantasy. But what else? I think it's fundamentally this is what I'm trying to help solve, I guess, is I think that money has been this taboo thing, not only from a candidate perspective, but from an employer perspective. Like, I don't think there's nearly enough people sharing insights and content and tips and things about how to get paid right at companies. And that's something that I guess is part of the mission of what I'm trying to do is, how do I help more companies do all the things well that we've talked about in this episode? How do I get them to think about pay so that they can create a clear pay practice that is kind of grounded in their strategy and their culture? And how do we help them be consistent to that? And how do we help people not sit there wondering throughout their job, throughout their day, am I paid right? Is the person next to me getting paid more? Am I, should I go get another job to pay the bills or, whatever else it needs to be? Like, I think that's a real baseline I would like to see achieved at a global level. I know that's crazy, but that's why they call it a vision. That for me is like where I think we need to be. And I don't know what the solve is for it, except for this beautiful one-stop shop of compensation data. But that's the place that I'd like to see us get to as a world.
That's so cool. I think I thought about this question for a really long time after I wrote it down because I was like, what would that look like where everyone feels like they're paid right? And I just think as humans, I don't know if we can ever achieve something where we all have 100% consensus where everyone agrees yes, we're paid fairly. So I like this idea of a global compensation database that just kind of shows you. It's also universal income has been fascinating to me. So I'm there's a lot we could probably unpack here on a whole other episode, but I like that future vision. I think we're entering really interesting times when it comes to compensation. Just looking at the market the last 5 years has felt like whiplash. And so I'm curious to see where we go in the next 5 to 10 years. I hope our average employee salary, though, does go up, mostly because it hasn't kept up with the rate of inflation. And I think that's brutal when companies make billions and people become billionaires over and over again and shareholders make billions and the average person is struggling to make ends meet across the world. I just think
Yeah.
I have hope that we will find a way to like raise that average salary and really help companies, CEOs, founders, everyone understand that like paying your employees more can actually bear better fruit. They will do better work.
Yeah.
They will be able to
Yeah, I
live
agree.
better lives and show up better for you.
Yeah. Let's redistribute that wealth 100%.
Yeah, this just became like an anarchist podcast now. We're like, ha, just kidding. Okay, Matt.
No, systems are helpful. Systems are helpful.
I'm kidding. Okay, in the show notes, I always put guest info, but for someone, if they're super pumped after hearing this episode and want to reach out to you right away, what's the best platform to reach you on?
Yeah, I'm like chronically online but mostly on LinkedIn. So definitely hit me up there. I'm very responsive, probably too responsive, but yeah, I was about to say I'll always respond to a DM. I definitely do. Sometimes I miss them because LinkedIn is a little bit of a hot mess sometimes, but it's definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I mean, I talk about comp a lot as I've sort of mentioned here. So I talk about it a lot on my own podcast, which is called the Foundation Series. We post monthly, about to start posting weekly, but talk about this sort of stuff all the time with other incredible people. So if you like comp and you want to hear more about it, that's a great place to find me as well.
I love that. I know so many people I'm going to send that podcast to who work solely in comp and all they want to talk about is that. I'm like, here you go. The perfect resource for you. Meanwhile, I'll be over here at least once a season. I do talk about compensation because I think it's an important topic that I think we've like lost sight of sometimes. And I do think like back to our original thing, like employees just want to be paid fairly and they want to understand that. So with that, thank you so much for joining me today. I've loved this. I can't wait for future collaborations and we're going to have such a good time trying to fix the world.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.